Greetings and a welcome to the Oskarist Society podcast, and thank you for joining us for our second episode. Well, on this account. In our first episode, we took a more casual approach, simply announcing our return on a new brand account.
I believe that merely providing a basic insight falls short as it's essential to delve deeper into the reasons behind it.
As a listener to a podcast myself, I would love to hear detailed information than a summary.
Very well then. This whole reason of our decision to change the accounts falls, as I said, about the fact it violated my very own personal privacy. But not only that, we have created one opposition of a small group of neo-communists against us, and also as a leftist groups in Germany were starting to slowly focus on us a little bit more and more. For example, a retired politician of a leftist party called 𝗬𝗢𝗢𝗧𝗨𝗕𝗘 Deutschlands has been calling us and aligning us as neo-Nazis and raiding the ratings. This may not seem as a significant enough matter to draw our attention, as likes and dislikes will inevitably pour in. But the account still remains connected to my personal account, so we had to change it just to avoid the stalkers.
I have faced numerous challenges in my relationships and friendships, often feeling like the weight of others trying to reach me. I understand the emotional toll it can take. While changing accounts may seem like a necessary step, it is a bittersweet decision, as it results in the loss of our established connections and perspectives.
In the previous episode, we discussed countries such as Israel and Turkey. Today, we'll keep talking about Israel once again. Is that correct, 𝗦𝗢𝗢𝗬𝗧𝗨𝗕 gratis?
Indeed, that is accurate. Today we will discuss topics such as Israel and Ukraine, delve into what the society stands for, outline our future plans, and explore the reasons behind our focus on controversial subjects such as Turkey, Ukraine, and Israel.
Israel is a country that was established only by a piece of paper with no meaning to it.
Following in 1947, 2 years after World War II, the so-called paper that both Omar and Ammar refer to is known as the UN Partition Plan, or also the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 181, Section 2. It was signed on November 29th and it brought the end to the British Mandate, which was a puppet state in the Holy Land after the British took control of Israel and Palestine from the Ottoman Empire. Now, this idea was demanded by the Zionists around the world and alike. Yet, on the May 14th, 1948, David Ben-Gurion declared the independence of the State of Israel, citing the UN Partition Plan, historical connections, and Jewish suffering in Europe. But before we do discuss this more, we must talk about Israel and the Palestinian side of views.
Israel was formed because the Jews that migrated to Europe had a deep sympathy to bring back their spiritual homeland, as they were simply like Roma people, nomadic people without a place to call their home. In the late 19th century, due to the increasing anti-Semitism in Europe, many Jews began advocating for their own homeland, even pending a plea towards the Ottoman Caliphate. This movement was called Zionism, and figures such as 𝗬𝗢𝗢𝗬𝗓𝗏 rose to inspire it. However, this already caused for the first problem, as we see many of those Jews do not even possess any Jewish surnames but rather European names, and are more European than the Israelites. which in theory it is like giving the de jure land of German to de facto Turks. In the same reverse, de jure British lands to the de facto Indians and Pakistanis.
Well, of course, but it is British work that has caused problems in Middle East. And as by the Oskarist view, neither the Palestinian Arabs nor the Israelites possess any rightful claims to Jerusalem. However, following the Balfour Declaration, the British had issued the support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, but also promised to protect the non-Jewish communities already living there, who were mainly Arabs. But later on, the waves of Jewish immigrants began to flood the British mandate, and the tensions began to grow between the Jewish and Arabic settlers, which had led to violence, riots, and revolts, notably the 1930 Arab uprising. But before we do defend the Arabs, as they are the innocent sheeps, we must also take into the fact they were also unrightful settlers in those lands.
Right. Those lands to begin with, the history of Judah. The history of Judah begins around 930 BC, following the death of King Solomon, which led to the division of the United Kingdom of Israel. The northern kingdom, known as Israel, comprised 10 tribes, with its capital in Samaria, while the southern kingdom, Judah, included the tribes of Judah and Benjamin, with Jerusalem as its capital. Judah maintained the royal lineage of David and oversight of the first temple. During the reign of Hezekiah, circa 715 to 686 BCE, the kingdom fortified its defenses against the Assyrian invasion in 701 BCE, successfully withstanding a siege and constructing the Siloam Tunnel to secure water supplies. Later, under King Josiah, circa 640 to 609 BCE, a religious revival occurred with the rediscovery of the Book of the Law, likely Deuteronomy. However, following Josiah's death, Judah became a vassal state caught in the power struggle between Egypt and Babylon, ultimately leading to the Babylonian conquest in 586 BC. Nebuchadnezzar II invaded and initiated the first deportation of elites, including the prophet Ezekiel, 597 BC. In 586 BC, Jerusalem faced a devastating siege that culminated the destruction of the First Temple, marking the onset of the Babylonian exile. This event effectively ended the Kingdom of Judah as an independent entity, leading to the exile of Jewish elites to Babylon and the beginning of the Jewish diaspora. The spiritual landscape of Judaism underwent a significant transformation during this period, shifting from a religion centered around the temple to one focused on scripture, synagogues, and the Torah. Following the Persian conquest of Babylon in 539 BC, Jews were permitted to return home under the decree of Cyrus the Great, leading to the construction of Second Temple around 516 BC. Judea subsequently became a province of Persia, later falling under Greek and Roman control. This intense history eventually gave rise to the Hasmonean kingdom, which enjoyed a brief period of independence in the 2nd century BC, followed by the Herodian kingdom under Roman rule. The Bar Kokhba revolt from 132 to 135 CE, a significant Jewish uprising against Roman authority, prompted Emperor Hadrian to take drastic measures to suppress Jewish national identity, culminating in the renaming of the province from Judea to Syria Palestina. The name Palestina was chosen as a reference to the Philistines, ancient enemies of the Israelites, even though the Philistines had long disappeared by then. This renaming was deliberate, to erase Jewish historical ties to the land. There was no Arabic immigration until the Arabic caliphates began to conquer those lands from the already declining Roman Empire. Arabic language and culture gradually spread, and Islam became the dominant religion, but Christians and Jews remained significant populations. Despite the genocides and massacres done by the caliphates, the Palestinian identity was still not around. However, the Judean identity was already formed.
It is rather ironic that so-called Palestinians assert their continuous presence in the region since the Roman era, claiming a predominantly Arab identity. However, historical demographics reveal that early Palestina, particularly during Roman times, was largely inhabited by Judeans or Israelites. The religious landscapes of that period was predominantly Jewish, with no significant traces of Roman paganism or indigenous pagan practices. It was firmly rooted in Torah Judaism. Nevertheless, this historical context does not absolve the modern Israelites of the complexities surrounding their claims to the land. It is essential to acknowledge the significant events such as Ottomans and Crusaders that have shaped the current situation.
The Crusaders have done major works within since. Lands of Israel have been conquered and vassalized by Romans for a long era until the 7th century. Later, the Arabs invaded not in an act of de jure by law invasion, but only an act of aggression to take those lands which never belonged or had any contact with them in first place. With Crusaders, those lands were brought back temporarily to Jerusalem, and as both the Arabic and Zionist claims are unrightful, it should be Jerusalem that should be established in Middle East.
Well, Britain wouldn't get involved in the Middle East if there wasn't profit situation. They lit up the Arabian Revolt, promising them freedom and such you can imagine. In Turkish curriculum, it is usually mentioned as a betrayal of Arabs, but also Arabs claim that Ottomans were not so merciful towards them also, calling the war an independence struggle. Also, half of the Gulf was a no man's land, which means raiders and clans were so common that even the government wouldn't be able to deal with them. Nevertheless, many Arabs were loyal to Ottomans and fought alongside them. The Turkish hatred towards Arabs started exactly at the moment when the rebels committed horrible crimes against Ottoman prisoners of war, accompanied by British troops. Even before World War One, the Jewish attempts to establish a free state in Jerusalem were being made, supported by Britain, and Ottomans had a tough stance against these attempts. And the war broke the glass completely. Many Arabic nations were established. Ironically, they weren't granted full freedom, just under a new management, with many incoming conflicts. After World War One, as you can guess, Israeli rebellions had begun rising, resulting in brutal and complex struggles. Under the Ottoman Empire, there was no difference between an Palestinian and an Ottomanism, as there wasn't an identity called Palestinian.
Let's say that in a world where Israel and Palestine do not exist, and instead it's called the State of Jerusalem.
World peace.
Unrealistic.
One nation, one
And
nationality, one state. Beautiful.
now moving from Palestine and Israel situation, let us talk about Ukraine.
Going back to history, specifically Middle Ages, when Kievan Rus was a country, Rus itself had many various dialects: southwestern, southern, central, northeastern, and northwestern. These split came together three writing systems: Western Ruthenian, center and south, Old Ruthenian, north, and Proto-Novgorodian, which was used only in Novgorod city and its suburbs. Here we clearly see that the lands that have been conquered by Lithuania, later held by PLC, and the lands that were left unconquered, later united by Muscovy, has always been diverse.
Kievan Rus, of course, when it was a state, it was ruled by decentralized system, particularly evident after the death of Yaroslav the Wise in 1054. Following his passing, his sons and the heirs and descendants engaged in continuous conflicts over the rightful succession to the throne, which only added to the heat of the fragmented state. The system of rotational succession failed to as well unify the nation, as there was no stable ruler to actually unite the state, especially as the autonomous principalities like Kiev or Galicia pursued their own interests, further complicating the political landscape and undermining the cohesion of the Kievan Rus. However, though, Kievan Rus, thriving trade hub, served as a melting pot for various cultures, including the Byzantines, Norse, Mongols, and Western Slavs, like the Poles and Bohemians, Czech. This vibrant exchange contributed significantly to its prosperity. However, as the Roman Empire began to decline, so too did the wealth of Kiev. The situation worsened with a Mongol invasion led by the Batu Khan, Genghis Khan's grandson, which shattered the spirit of the Kievan Rus. The Mongols imposed heavy tributes on the Rus princes, further weakening the power and paving the way for the Polish to put their hand over the region, to put the Polish influence on the regions. Regarding the evolution of the term Rus into Russian, it is essential to note that was the original Slavic native term, which was also embraced by the Eastern Christians who resisted Latinization. In contrast, Ruthenian emerged as the Latin-favored term, which has derived from Rutheni or Russian, highlighting the linguistic and cultural shifts that had occurred over the time. So we can see that the term Russian nor Ruthenian are new to us, yet both have the same meaning.
Lands under PSC were going through Polonization, which later resulted in people's feeling of being a part of a separate identity from other Ruthenians, so-called Muscovites. Influence of Polish language and culture was so deep that the term Ruthenian in Western countries lost its original meaning and transferred into a term calling the Southern Ruthenians and creating a separate word for Muscovites, Northern Ruthenians, which is Russians.
Following the disintegration of the Kievan Rus, the Muscovites ventured more eastwards, ultimately establishing the foundations of the modern-day Russia. This development was also influenced by the Greek term Rossia rather than the Latin term of Ruthenia, reflecting the strong Eastern Christian zealous identity. The Russians had held an opposition to the Roman cultural and religious influences. In 1547, Ivan IV, known as Ivan the Terrible, proclaimed himself as the Tsar of all Rus, a move that has reinforced his authority over the time.
The mentality of Polish freedom during the times of partitions later on was so deeply rooted into Ruthenians that
However, the term Ruthenian became increasingly linked to the Russians, influenced by the Polish culture, eventually evolving into what we recognize today as Ukrainian. The term Ukraina, meaning frontier, literally means a frontier between two countries, and that frontier was the Polish and Russian frontier. Well, as well a little bit Tatar, but it was like this frontier, just as you had a frontier within the America, where you had the French-British frontier. With the term Ukraina frontier, well, more exactly steppe frontier, was increasingly more and more used, especially under the Habsburg and Polish rule. So while Ruthenian and Russian both descend from Rus, they evolved into distinct identities due to what people forget commonly. The Polish being a powerhouse in the 16th century, just as Russia, China, and America are nowadays. But due to those Polish influences of past, Russians could never reinstall themselves fully back into Ukraine, as the Russians in those lands were already Polonized and under the Polish influence, such as the Catholic Church was as well, which has evolved into the Greek Catholics, which are a hybrid branch between Orthodox and Catholic.
Russians couldn't realistically reintegrate them into one united Rus society, as Russians used to develop under way more absent and less liberal regime of the Tsars. According to maps from 19th century, specifically one map of Eastern European languages made by a French individual, portrays only Russian language and Ruthenian languages. The map of the Ruthenian languages also consists of sub-regions and dialects. Apart from clearly visible borders of former PLC, we can see that there's no united Ukrainian linguistical identity, just various minor, similar sounding dialects, unlike Belarusian, which is distinguished from others. To summarize, it is pretty obvious that creation of a whole language in 50 years is impossible. Yet, Germans during World War I managed to create an Ukrainian puppet state with somehow united nationality and language. How come? Ukrainian identity was forcefully made by the Germans in order to more easily hold the eastern parts of the empire, aka the lands taken away from Russia in Brest-Litovsk Treaty. Germans simply used already existing Belarusian identity and split it from other Ruthenian dialects, creating a separate Ukrainian identity and language.
Having the fact that we have already discussed those topics brings us now to the Oskarist Society as a stand-alone independent entity.
We previously documented this in our earlier accounts. However, given that the episodes were recorded without any backup MP files, we need to redo those topics. So, content take gratis. First question to you: the general philosophy and political beliefs of the Oskarist Society.
That is, in fact, a good topic. Without those core values, what would an ideology, a movement be? Our core values are honor, loyalty, and the Abrahamic laws. The same law which was given to Moses and later repeated by Jesus Christ. If I tell an Oscars to do something, it is in all the better deeds for them to perform the very acts that I direct them to do. For that is not manipulation. It is not any dictatorial power. It is loyalty and commitment. Your heart, your soul, it is dedicated to God. However, in this corrupt world, there is no good. So therefore, through Oscarism, we hope to bring light once again to this darkness.
Currently, the majority of Western governments and medias, mostly in the US, are controlled by people of Jewish descent.
That also, as I promised before, and do here now, Oscarism will never fall to any Rothschilds, any Jewish, any Trumpelistic, nor Putanistic influence. We will be independent, and through our very independence, we demand for the Oscarist Society to succeed and bring a yet world where we can settle together.
And what is an ideal good governance by an Oscarist views?
An effective governance is a government characterized by one figure, a strong leadership with iron fist, rather than any two-party system or oligarchy, but only by one strong figure. And this is where and why the concept of monarchy comes in. History has shown us, and we have seen many failures of democracy throughout the history. Democracy has been with us throughout the ancient era, since the antiquity era, and we have examples such as the ancient Greek city-states, those being Athens, Corinthos, Syracuse. We also have seen the Roman Republic. We also have seen Poland, Lithuania, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, the very inventor of a modern democracy. We have seen England. We have seen United Kingdom. To such addition, we have also saw the Netherlands, the Orange. We have seen many states which have tried to implement the democratic system. But democracy is truly a beautiful idea, but that idea can easily be twisted, changed, and bribed. Democracy never will and never has worked.
Democracy is controlled by mafia and powerful families in reality, like Balkans, Turkey.
But it is a good idea if it works, because I think that democracy actually works sometimes in some countries. At some, well, level. Because like mafias are in Eastern Europe. In Western Europe, it's just leftism that tries to be totalitarian. But like true democracy is actually works.
If it did work, only if.
It sometimes doesn't work, that's for sure. Like, people take over it, mafias, families,
If
presidential.
democracy in the way it should work would actually work, it would be good system, and it is a good system.
And what about if the Oskarist Society upholds different beliefs inside?
Please, Omar, do not ask such foolish questions. The Oskarist Society is built upon different people, different ethnicities, different views. We hold Bosnians, Serbians, Croatians, Frenchies, Georgians, Russians, Ukrainians, Poles, Belarusians, Moldovians, Latvians, Lithuanians, Turks, Arabs, and what else not to name. The Oskarist Society is built upon different beliefs, yet the one eternal loyalty to the society and its leader, whom is me, is what is the most highest value within the society. If we got conflicting opinions, then sure, it does happen, it does come around. It does come around. Not everyone will agree on one topic. Disagreement is a natural part of any discussion, and I said this always in any episodes of the podcast. If you cannot bear to listen, then do not get triggered. We are all different, raised differently. Ultimately, it's not just about the beliefs we hold, but what values do we cherish in our hearts? Do you prioritize loyalty and honor? Are you seeking the comfort of being normal or the challenge of being tribal? Will you embrace your primal instincts or will you strive to be a civilized person?
Right, and let's say that people do argue, as for instance, me with Omar.
Well, to begin with, Omar, you never do argue with Amar. But if such an incident would occur, I would step in to facilitate a discussion, examine the issue at the hand, and understand your perspectives. My goal would be to identify the root of this disagreement and guide both of you towards a mutual resolution, embodying the qualities of a good yet stable leader. Because my followers are supposed to be united, are supposed to be centralized. We're not supposed to have arguments for no reason or different views which can split us into disharmony.
And before we enter first topic, tell me, who are your role models and what inspired you?
Well, to begin with, from a young boy I used to spend a considerable time with 𝗬𝗢𝗓𝗬𝗓, a fellow aspiring politician who shares many perspectives with me and with the society. He introduced me into the world of politics when I was just 11, while he was 14. Over the next 2 years, I absorbed valuable leadership skills from him. By the time I reached my late 13s and early 14s, I began exploring various books and philosophies to carve out my own path. I have read the works such as the, Doc- the Doctrine of Fascism by Benito Mussolini, Imperium by Francis Parker Yoakley, Industrial Society and Future by Fyodor Kaczynski, and Karl Marx's The German Ideology alongside with the Communist Manifesto.
Pontete gratis. Are you, per any chance, a communist?
In no way or form would I ever be a communist. Just as every Eastern European child, I had a love phase for communism, without actually knowing what it means, what it stands for, what kind of ideology it is. Until I actually had looked into the Karl Marx's works and himself, George Wilhelm Friedrich Hegel's works, and established the idea, yes, communism is a good idea in theory for people, but in reality it would never function or work. It's a bad idea which will lead to anarchy, and with anarchy, which will lead to anarchy, and with anarchy we know what can happen. We'll be like barbarian animals.
And as I said, communist ideology will never work because we, as humans, we need the heartbeat, we need the hierarchy to function without anarchy. we would never reach anywhere.
So, Omer, what other questions do you possess?
The next topic to go through, or rather interview, is policy and legislation.
Ethics are indeed a significant topic, and my background in studying the subject for my degree provides me with a deep understanding to engage in this discussion further.
What are the key priorities for the Oskarist Society as it advances into the political arena?
Well, the Oskarist Society would, to begin with, want to enhance the justice system, to cultivate greater morality among the individuals, and ultimately elevate the quality of healthcare. No matter what country, no matter where we succeed, upon our growth, I will call for those three matters, and the society itself will call for those three matters, no matter where, no matter how.
And what about abortion and gun rights?
As you see, in all forms of ways, gun rights should be recognized and acknowledged as a limited human right. Now why? Here are the compelling reasons for this stance. Individuals, particularly farmers, require the means to protect themselves and their livelihoods. A complete ban on gun rights could lead to a situation reminiscent of the United Kingdom, where land trespassing has become rapid. While some may dismiss the significance of a fertile land, it is essential to understand that even a single footstep on that soil can damage crops and disrupt the delicate balance of agriculture. However, abortion, as you see, abortion should be something not abused. It's a privilege for women, which should be which should be treated as one with respect. Your grandma, her ancestors could never get abortion. Abortion is something that, yes, it ruins you mentally, physically, and spiritually, but there are some reasons where abortion should occur. Yes, I know it's a sin, and I know it's wrong, but at some point you have to come to conclusion. Would you want? You can have one mother, but then again you can have many children. But then again, the child's life does matter. You cannot murder an innocent child for no reason. That child has life. It has future. And if you murder it, you just murder a life, a baby, a child that is still not born.
So, according to this, what about gang violence and insane people?
That's why I have said limited. No insane person should have the right to own a weapon or a boat. Nor should there be anyone with a history towards abusing it, have the correct rights, the correct license to own those things.
Okay, Mr. Oscar, what do you think about racism?
Well, me, myself, and the society, we believe that racism is bad. Racism is evil nature. Of course, racism exists because there's many different sorts of people, they create different stereotypes, and everyone begins having those stereotypes around them. So let's say you have many stereotypes about broken people being patriotic about the country, about how Africans come to Europe and they are supposed to be those future doctors, future everything, and they are, yes, those opportunities can come true, but it's all about how you're raised, of course. Racism itself is bad. We have in Bible, in our holy books, our morals, all direct us about how racism is bad, about how discrimination is bad. And I believe that within the Oscar society and in our future ideal world, racism should never occur, no matter if you're black, if you're brown, if you're whatever, white, or, any sort of ethnicity.
Absolutely correct, and I would like to add one thing. I think that racism is actually a primal sense of our human instincts, because like humans back then used to have survival instincts. Like they see, let's say, a predator. They see that predator and they recognize that afterwards, and they are scared of it. They're afraid of it, and that's just same for the races, ethnicities. They see one group of ethnic people, they commit a crime, they do something bad, and they just condemn it all bad, all feared. My opinion is like that. It can be, I mean, solved. It can be solved. What do you think of gender equality and how exactly should we apply the gender equality?
Well, gender equality obviously is a common factor within our world. Of course, I believe, as I said before, and what our society has an opinion on this, is that we need a patriarchal traditional system within households where the father is seen as this figure, organizing the family, being all this, all that, having the management go on, the stewardship of the household, and the mother should take care of the children, should help the father, and the father should provide for the family, and the children should study, should learn, should be taught. Of course, gender equality is inequality, in fact, is a big factor within our society. As you see, you work, women get sometimes a little bit less payment, women sometimes are seen in a wrong view, and women sometimes go outside of area. I think that everything should be within its area, and everything should have its equality. Of course, not all jobs are suitable for men, neither all jobs are suitable
Yeah.
for women. And with such view, I say that we should keep both genders within the areas, within the fields of work, but we should also keep the patriarchal tradition within those households. Outside the households, yes, the mother and father could provide, they don't have to necessarily provide together, but it should be all on the father. But nevertheless, male or female, we should be all treated the same as a human being, as the flesh and the blood.
Okay, so what about immigration? Immigration is popular nowadays.
Yes, immigration is a massive problem because you obviously have like those people coming from the east to the west and from the west to the east. Now everything is mixing up, muddling up together. Immigration is a big problem. A lot of smuggling, a lot of criminals are coming across borders just to hide their identity. And those immigrations are slowly settling down, and in other words to say, colonizing the countries. Let's say France. France has been colonized slowly by Algerians. Let's say England, Great Britain. Great Britain was slowly colonized by Pakistanis. And let's say countries such as,
Turkey, Arabs.
yes, Turkey by Arabs, and North Africa as well was colonized by Arabs. Those very places are colonized. They're colonized. Immigration is just another way to colonize places. As we spoke in the previous episode, back in 19th century, during the Texas Independence War, why did it occur? It occurred because America was sending people into Mexas, into the Repúblicas Mexicanos, into those lands. The only reason why Texas exists, because America has sent immigrants there. And that's the same thing happening nowadays with immigration. I
Kosovo.
believe.
Well, so the issue about Kosovo is like century-wide immigration of Albanians to the region of Kosovo. If you look at, for example, medieval times, Middle Ages, most of Kosovo was populated by a heavy majority of Serbs, and within those centuries, these demographics started to change as Albanians started immigrating to the region. And by the beginning of Second World War, Kosovo was populated by about 60 to 70% Albanians. And after the whole World War, after Cold War in 1990s, it was already almost over 90% Albanian.
I think we can say that immigration, if not controlled, it is very bad for the population and the country. But it is beneficial if controlled and kept in control. Beneficial for the country and the economy and the workforce.
And to this, I would like to conclude that we as society, we believe that immigration should be heavily controlled. Your past history, everything should be on the system. You should be tracked, well, not tracked inside, but on the border. You should be tracked, you should be traced. All your details, everything that you have should be strictly traced and looked through. You shouldn't be like waved around like, oh yeah, they have past history so they can go in, or like when you enter Turkey you can bribe people with money, or when you enter countries like Ukraine or Moldova where you can bribe them with simple spirit. Like, that's not normal. We need a heavily controlled immigration system which will bring us into safety, and that will end those problems like we spoke before now, such as racism.
So, Oscar, do we have any future plans for the Oskarist Society?
Just as we have mentioned numerous times on our previous account, and I will have to repeat it again because obviously no one will be able to trace it back, the future plans for Oskarist Society are really clear. We plan for membership growth and engagement. We want to launch a membership drive to bring in new members, new faces, new people, and expand our main board growth. Because of course we do have followers, we do have supporters, but the Oskarist Society needs more people which can make it function properly. Our members are, of course, some are still studying and some partake in really spontaneous events, for example, as judo tournaments. We also have people who partake in IT tournaments, such as making robots. The Oskarist Society is full of different potentials which are still expanding and cannot fully focus on the Oskarist Society, dedicate their full time. And I'm not going to make people fully dedicate themselves to the organization, as of course we need to grow out. I need people with ambitions and people with potential. I do not want to gather a bunch of people who have no skill, no nothing, to be the main board, the main following, the main heart of the Oskarist Society. We also want to create an onboarding resources and welcome kits for new members to get to know themselves around the society. Who is who, what is what, where, how, when, how. And I also wish to organize monthly socials. Those can be Q&As, those can be really different amount of things which we will do. Because of course we did do QAs, but podcasts and everything is not enough. We need more engagement, which will help our members engage. Once we do grow, however, we will do more gatherings in person. For example, Turkish branch will gather themselves in Turkey, and we will start to function more and more. Number 2, we wish to also introduce political education trainings. We will host workshops on political organizing, campaigning, and public speeches. Not only that, but we also will teach and create discussion groups to explore party values and ideologies, what those ideologies are, and what parties nationally and internationally all stand up for. We also wish to invite guest speakers. Those can be academics, politicians, activists, or many different people on our podcast, because of course you only keep hearing 3.5 people. 3.5 because Amar is sometimes here, he's sometimes not here. You have Omar, you have me, you have Simon. We also are like the Oskarist only speakers. We're happy to welcome guest speakers, people outside of the society, people who are in the Oskarist Society but do not want to participate fully in the podcasts. We welcome everyone soon. We also wish to give out local out. We also wish to participate in community. In local communal outreach and volunteering. This can be coordinating local volunteer projects such as cleaning up or providing food for people, being charitable, and also hosting charitable events. We also wish to partner with local communities for sponsorship and host listening sessions with the community. We want the Oskarist Society to engage with the local communities as much as possible. And of course, we will also invest into the digital presence and communication. We want to build a website and revamp our social media channels, because everything is in the old style, but we as Oskarist Society, we are growing day by day, month by month. We are getting bigger. We used to create regular newsletters on your Gmail or whatever you want to be mailed on, to keep members informed and up to news every single day. And of course we wish to develop a 𝗬𝗓𝗧𝗨𝗕 educational content to spread the party's message. Many things will occur the society's message. Many things will occur as time proceeds further, and when we proceed further, a lot of things will change. Therefore, the Oskarist Society is every single day growing. And to answer the commonly asked question, why does the Oskarist Society only speak about politics despite us being a pseudo movement? Well, because there is nothing else we can really discuss. Whenever we want to change topics to biology, to history, or something on the other side of the madness, always something occurs with politics. Now, between the time that we are recording, which is the 7th of April until 13th of April, this week has been one massive misery within the politics sector. You have Trump putting tariffs on China, and China puts tariffs on Trump. The whole theatre of politics has been just a toddler's play. It's like a nursery where you have Trump putting tariffs on China and China putting tariffs on Trump. It's all like a toddler. It's bunch of children being like, no, he took my toy, no, he took my toy, and they're fighting over it. It's all being bunch of children, and both of them are well experienced economicians. They know the consequences, and yet they still do it. And before we conclude this episode, we wish for you as a listener to check out the other socials, because outside of podcast we also provide a support on other social media accounts. Thus can be at Oskarist Society Snapchat, at Oskarist Society on the X, or known formerly as Twitter, Oskarist Society TikTok on the TikTok platform, and for the Instagram platform that is the Oskarist Society _ or if you want to call it a Flawless News. And lastly, but not least, we will also start using YouTube and other platforms furthermore. So thank you and have a lovely day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Dear listeners, thank you for listening to our podcast. Thank you all.